So for most of my gaming life, I've always had a special place for two certain video game franchises. One of them being the Super Mario franchise, as I made countless videos on this series. But also, I've been a massive fan of the Sonic franchise for nearly 2 decades now. Growing up on the Nintendo Wii, I had a wide range of so many great Sonic games, from the classic Genesis games thanks to the Mega Drive collection, and even stuff like the adventure games. Even though that these aren't really the best way to play them, I still consider these as one of my favorite platformers of all time. But out of all the games that are released over the years, the one I can consider as one of the most acclaimed Sonic games of all time has to be Sonic Generations. As this game was essentially one big celebration of the entire Sonic series. From the Genesis days to the adventure games to even the much more newer games at the time, this game did an excellent job representing the mainline Sonic games that are released over the years. But as for my personal history, as I mentioned before, I was a Nintendo Wii kid growing up, but Sonic Generations was the game that convinced me to get a different gaming console, as Sonic Generations never got a release on the Nintendo Wii. So when Christmas morning came in 2011, I was able to get an Xbox 360, as well as a copy of Sonic Generations. So yeah, this was the game that caused me to own an Xbox console for the first time. Unfortunately though, I don't own the Xbox anymore. We sold it years ago and I kinda regret it. But luckily this game got released on PC, and I played hundreds, and I mean hundreds of hours of Sonic Generations, from the vanilla version to the various mods. This was definitely one of my most played games of all time. And it was also a game that I really wanted to play on my Nintendo Switch when I first got this console. But luckily, 7 years later, my wish was finally granted as SEGA announced a brand new remaster of Sonic Generations. I still remember a few months ago when this game leaked online, but I was more so confused on it because of the title alone being Sonic X Shadow, which, yeah, I know. Which is weirdly not the first time SEGA did this, because last year they released Sonic Dream Team, and everyone's minds immediately went to Sonic's Dream Collection. Originally I thought of just doing the video on the brand new game release with this collection, but I thought why not talk about both of these games in one video. As Sonic Generations was the game I really want to talk about down the line, so why not just kill two birds in one stone. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. So I'm just gonna jump the gun real quick and say that Sonic Generations doesn't really have that much of a story to it. As the story begins with classic Sonic running around in Green Hill until one day he encounters the Time Eater, which does something to the area. Meanwhile, far into present day, Tails decided to throw Sonic a little birthday party with all of his friends. Everyone's having a good time, with Sonic having a delicious chili dog to celebrate. Until suddenly, the Time Eater then appears to literally crash the party, as he then sucks all of Sonic's friends into these small little portals. The Hedgehog then tries to intervene, but then suddenly gets knocked out cold, and when he wakes up, he finds himself in this white void. And after literally running down memory lane, he was able to find Tails in the white void as well, and eventually he was able to find his past self as well, where they both decide to team up and try to fight this evil monster. So yeah, that's basically the story of Sonic Generations, as you run around different areas of Sonic's past while trying to save his friends. And honestly, considering the context of this game, I'm honestly fine that there's really not that much of a story for Generations, as the whole time traveling setup is mostly a good excuse just to try and relive these classic Sonic moments. With the only big noteworthy thing is that it turns out that Dr. Eggman was controlling this monster, as well as being aided by his past self, which honestly when I was young it really blew my mind. As it was weird seeing a much more younger Eggman, especially since he looks drastically different compared to Sonic and Tails. They even made a small little joke acknowledging the fact that no one really calls him Dr. Robotnik anymore. However, despite this game being very simple with a story, the remaster of Sonic Generations had an interesting discussion online, as with this remaster, they decided to rework a lot of the cutscenes in this game. And not just simply adding a few chows here and there, they instead rewrote the entire game, as now some of the characters will say something completely different that really gives this game a different feel to it. Like for example, in the original Sonic Generations, Sonic never really remembers Green Hill Zone, as he states to Tails that the location he ran through felt very familiar. Doubly so when they enter the chemical plant, as Tails states that the location does feel familiar, and he feels uneasy around the water. However, jumping all the way to the remaster, Sonic and Tails acknowledges that it's Green Hill and the chemical plant. I feel like they mostly did this because when it comes to Sonic, he practically lives in Green Hill these days. It's literally the equivalent of Mario going through the Mushroom Kingdom, and the whole style is literally New Super Mario Bros. And 3D Land. So the redub is mostly okay with me. Again, Sonic Generations doesn't really have that much of a story. But my personal gripe with the cutscenes is that now some of the line deliveries are a lot more worse than the original.
Where am I? Where am I?
Take a good look at yourself, Sonic.
Dr. Eggman!
Take a good look at yourself, Sonic.
Dr. Eggman!
What? No! No! Sonic, save me! What? No! No! Sonic, save me!
And other times, the rewrites doesn't really fit with the cutscenes at all, especially with this infamous scene.
Thanks, Sonic. You did a good job back there. Hey, did you gain weight?
Thanks, Sonic. Now then, tell me, where is the rest of my island?
My tummy hurts. Now, I will say is that personally I'm a big fan of Ian Flynn's writing, as I really do love the Sonic IDW comics and got really excited when he was being the writer for Frontiers. But I feel like with the rewrite for Sonic Generations, he was in this position where he needs to rewrite the script but also need to be in line with the cutscenes. And that's why the rewrites of this game doesn't really have the same flow as the original, especially with the other game in this collection where the writing there feels a lot more natural. But anyway, so jumping all the way to gameplay. So in Sonic Generations, this game is divided into two different sections. The first one being is Classic Sonic, which basically plays in line with the original Genesis games. Meaning that all of his moves are simply just to jump and do a small little spin dash. Which, even though that he doesn't control exactly like the Genesis games, he does make up for having a stupidly fun spin dash. And also, Classic Sonic can wield his own power-ups with the elemental shields, and if you're familiar with Sonic 3, they basically work the exact same. But jumping all the way to modern Sonic, he essentially controls exactly the same as from Unleashed and Colors. So if these levels, you're trying to keep a constant speed up and try to get to the end of the level as fast as you can. And man, I haven't really played this game in a really long time, but once I was able to boot it up on my Switch, it felt so natural. I really like the brand new button layout for this game, where it's basically shared from Sonic Frontiers, where instead of trying to boost with the Y button on the Nintendo Switch, you use the ZR button, which feels surprisingly very natural, especially when I go through the various stages in this game, because my god, I really love most of the stages in this game. Green Hill Zone, even though this is probably the simplest stage in this game, it is very fun and addicting to try to speedrun it. Sky Sanctuary is a blast to go through as there's so many different paths you can go through, and I still even find some to this very day. And Speed Highway. Man, I really love this stage. It's probably one of my favorite in this whole Sonic series, as it's just so very exhilarating just to run through this giant city at night. And yes, I did throw out the Dreamcast skin specifically for these stages, because for one, look at him, he's so chunky. And second, this is probably the closest thing I'm ever going to get to the Sonic Adventure games on Nintendo Switch. SEGA, please, for the love of God, port these games to modern consoles. But yeah, overall the stage representation in this game has been very spot on. I love the fact that every single Sonic game gets represented so equally in this game. Like, even though that Sonic CD didn't really get a stage in this game, it did make up for having a really cool boss stage with Metal Sonic. And it's very impressive too, considering the time that this game released. Because keep in mind, during the 2010s, it was mostly a trend to bash on Sonic and constantly dick-ride the Genesis games. But no, every single Sonic game gets their fair share of representation of this game at the time. Even with something like Sonic 06, despite this game being the one that ruined Sonic's reputation, they still represented this game equally like the other Sonic games. And it's not all just for show, because they even replicate some of the most iconic moments from each of these stages. Like in Chemical Plant, where the pink water constantly rises in Sonic 2, and that's been represented here in Generations. At the near end of City Escape, you're getting chased by an over-exaggerated version of the gun truck from Adventure 2, which is way more aggressive of trying to kill Sonic.
That tornado's carrying a car!
And graphically, even 10 years later, this game still looks phenomenal. And despite me playing this on a Nintendo Switch, the game still looks extremely crisp. And even comparing to modern Sonic games like Sonic Superstars that released last year, comparing those graphics to this one in classic Sonic stages, it is complete night and day. And yeah, you can make the small argument that they didn't really touch up graphics or anything, it's more so like a enhanced port similar to what Nintendo does. But personally, I'm perfectly fine with it, because with games like this, all they really needed to do was make the game look higher resolution and such. The only actual criticism I can think of this game, and this is a probably common one for a lot of people, is that I wish this game was a bit longer, as this game has 9 areas to go through with 2 levels in each of them. Which personally I'm very fine with because the levels themselves are completely jam-packed with so many secrets and goodies you can find, like the returning red star rings, which are well hidden within the areas, as well as the brand new child collectibles, which doesn't really do that much besides being in the overworld. Oh yeah, there's an overworld in this game. There's really not that much to talk about with this place because it's mostly a level select, but you can talk to some of your friends and look at the museum with a lot of these cool little concept arts. But the main reason why you're exploring this white void is to try and find these various missions within the acts. As how Sonic Generations is structured is that you have 3 areas to go through with 2 acts in each of them, and once you do all that, you'll unlock the boss gate and also missions. You're required to do at least 1 of the missions to get a special key to unlock the boss gate. And these can be a variety of things, like a small little competition with one of your friends. It could include a special little gimmick like all the enemies being sped up, or it could be a race to the end as you go up against your doppelganger. Which I gotta say, oh my god, I really should have muted Omochow. As he's literally the hint system that shows you the way how to do these areas, and every time you do a doppelganger race, he says the exact same lines in every single one of them. His doppelganger lines is basically burned in my head at this point. And the only reason why I haven't disabled it because I was too lazy to do so. But yeah, so you basically just have to grab all the keys, and once you do so, you're able to unlock the special boss gate. And I've gotta say, Sonic Generations has a really good library of bosses, as they're both divided into 2 separate types. The first one being the rival battle, where Classic Sonic is able to face off Metal Sonic, where it's a nifty callback to his boss stage in Sonic CD. While Modern Sonic is able to face off with Shadow the Hedgehog with a callback with his boss in Sonic Adventure 2, as well as Silver the Hedgehog as you face him off in Crisis City. But as for the main boss fights, they're pretty much a mix of some of the most iconic bosses in the Sonic series, like the returning Death Egg robot from Sonic 2, Perfect Chaos from Sonic Adventure, and the Egg Dragoon from Sonic Unleashed. And what I like is that all these bosses aren't just a one-to-one recreation because they have completely different attack patterns. In Sonic 2, how you beat the Death Egg is you have to attack him by the front, but in Generations, you need to attack him by behind, and then there's a second phase where you need to lure the Death Egg robot to these bombs. In the Perfect Chaos boss fight, it is a somewhat recreation of the boss in the original game, where you need to run through the water to hit his weak spot, but I like the fact that Sonic has become a bit more powerful over the years, because originally it took Super Sonic to take him down, but now you can face him off as regular Sonic. And then there's the Egg Dragoon. All you really need to do is just hit the weak spot and such, and eventually he goes down. And then there's the final boss. So after you collect all these 7 Chaos Emeralds, you have to do this small little platforming challenge where you need to repair this clock. And once you do so, you're ready to do the final boss, and yeah, this is going to be another common opinion. I don't really like this boss fight per se, it's way too easy, and doesn't really feel that very satisfying to do so. But hey, at the very least, it's still a fairly easy boss fight, so I would rather have a stupidly easy boss fight than one that just drags on forever or so. But once you do the final blow, the day is saved as Sonic returns back to his place to enjoy his delicious chili dog, while everyone gets to enjoy the rest of the party. Ending things off with the duo saying goodbye to their past selves. Concluding Sonic Generations, and overall, still pretty good. I really adore Generations, and I still think this game holds out very well. I honestly would say that this is honestly one of the best Sonic games in the series. It's short and sweet, fun, fast-paced and such, everything you love about Sonic is here. And I am very happy that I can now play this game on my Nintendo Switch. But we are not done with this video yet, as Sonic X Shadow Generations is 2 games in 1. As Sonic Generations was the first half of this game's content, but Shadow Generations is a completely different beast. And SEGA really went all out for this game's marketing because literally every trailer for this game literally focuses on the Shadow Generations part to the point where some people actually forgot that this is a game compilation with Sonic Generations. It's literally Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury on steroids. And since I got the Day 1 edition of Shadow Generations, I was able to get this really cool reversible cover art, as well as an actual booklet holding Gerald's diary. Which I've gotta say, even though Sonic is a family-friendly series, there's just something funny about a kid getting this game because they're a big fan of Sonic thanks to like the movies or something. And one of the things they get with their funny hedgehog game is a freaking booklet of an old man slowly losing his mind after the government killed his granddaughter. But the top things off with the marketing in this game is that SEGA released a full-on animated short called The Dark Beginnings, and man, oh my god, I freaking love this. It was so phenomenal. I'm just so happy that after so many years of during the 2010s where like everything Sonic related in terms of like having a big story, especially with Shadow, always gets ridiculed by the internet commentators. And because of that, SEGA listened to them and we never really got something like this. Like, we would never get something like this during the 2010s. So it's really crazy to see a full-on reimagining of Shadow's origins like this, even reintroducing characters like Emerald and the Gun Commander from past games. And it's just really cool seeing Team Dark as a team again, with Rouge striking a deal with Shadow where she'll help him get Rocket Ship as long as he attends Sonic's birthday party, and Omega, I just love how hilariously bloodthirsty this robot is. Like, he constantly screams, "I call dibs," when he wants to blow up a robot. And he gets disappointed at Shadow when he destroys the gun helicopter because he wanted to destroy it. And man, Shadow's sibling relationship with Maria in the short is so wholesome and sad, as you get to see more of Shadow's life on the Ark, as some people ridicule him as a freak, while he's completely ashamed of being himself being part alien, as Maria was truly the only person that really helped him through this existential crisis. So it really makes it more tragic of what happened to this poor girl, as it's something that still haunts Shadow to this very day, as the final part of the short shows Shadow remembering his past with Maria. In that expression he makes at the near end, like he's literally on the verge of actually crying. But he puts himself back together and remembers that he has a mission to do with, as there is a mysterious threat on the Ark that he needs to stop. As once he arrives, he immediately encounters Black Doom's eye. And while he throws Shadow into a little fever dream, he states that the promised time is upon them once more. But once he arrives back on the Ark, he immediately encounters the Time Meter, as he's thrown alongside with Sonic and his friends into the White Void. But Shadow has fallen into a completely different location of his own, as the area he's in is completely taken over by Black Doom, who's trying to take advantage of the White Void's lack of time to speed up his plan, with the only thing he needs left is Shadow. And so it's now up to the Hedgehog to travel across different parts of time to stop Black Doom once and for all. So the first half of the story is very straightforward, as before going into deeper into the game's plot, Shadow's main priority is Black Doom. And along the way, he'll meet other characters within the White Void like Big the Cat, as well as Orban Cubot, who's trying to figure out a way to escape from the White Void. Now, the story of this game does get a lot more interesting with the second half, but I want to talk more about that a bit later, as I want to focus on the much more smaller stuff with this game's story, as I like how we get to see the creation of Shadow himself, as well as a really cool callback to Sonic Adventure 2, where in that game, Tails was able to make a fake Chaos Emerald to try and trick Eggman, and that same emerald returns in this game. And it's not just a really cool callback because it had story elements in this game as well, as later on in the game, Shadow will find himself in the White Void in Sonic Generations, where he was able to counter Sonic. And this is when the big rival battle when that game happens, but it's animated so better compared to Generations 11 years ago. Like, my god, the production value between Sonic and Shadow Generations is completely night and day. And the best part too is the big twist, where it turns out the emerald Sonic got from Shadow was a fake, which explains why Shadow is able to still do Chaos Control despite Sonic owning an emerald. And I've gotta say, despite the criticism with Ian Flynn where he constantly references quotes from past Sonic games, I had a stupid grin on my face when this cutscene showed.
I found you, Shadow!
The blue hedgehog, of all places.
You have something I need.
You can wait until my business is finished.
Yeah, sorry, but that Chaos Emerald and I have a date with a monster.
Well then, it'll be a date to die for.
But alright, so jumping all the way to gameplay. So even though that the plot and settings of this game is a direct sequel somewhat to Sonic Generations, gameplay-wise, it's a lot more in line with Sonic Frontiers, as the White Void in this game is one big sandbox, where there's so many nook and crannies you can explore into. Shadow controls very well in the White Void, and there's plenty of NPCs you can talk to which has their funny dialogue, with the funniest ones easily being from Big the Cat, where he questions a lot of things from Shadow, like asking him if he can teach him to do Chaos Control to make fishing easier. And beyond that, there are plenty of collectibles you can find throughout the overworld, which are various cool concept arts from past Sonic games, as well as unlocking more music to the soundtrack. And how you collect them is finding either these various treasure chests, or doing the various challenges similar to Sonic Frontiers. There's also a nifty side quest you can do in-game, as Orba and Cubot discover this rocket ship they want to repair so they can leave the White Void. So every time you collect a good batch of bullets, you'll unlock various collectibles as well. Although the actual prize you get at the end is probably not going to be worth it for you, let me tell you. But the real meat and potatoes in this game is easily with the brand new levels in Shadow Gens. Where the best way to describe it is that it's an effective blend between the adventure games and the modern boost games. Shadow controls extremely well in this game, as he has the perfect amount of speed, movement, and control in this game. And he's not just a carbon copy of Sonic because he has his own moveset completely unique from him. When you start the game, you immediately have his trademark move of Chaos Control, where you're able to slow down time to stop obstacles from getting your way, or if you find a glowing spot, you can use it to teleport your way to a different part of the area. But as more as you progress through the game, you unlock even more power-ups thanks to the brand new Doom powers. With the first one being as Doom Spear, which is a much more powerful version of Shadow's original Chaos Spear, as you're able to lock in about 5 enemies at once. Doom Blast is another good move, as Shadow is able to uppercut one of the Black Doom's enemies, and launch them far into the distance where he's able to teleport near them. This is so good of using because you get to see so many different secrets and hidden passages. And the same thing can be said about Doomsurf as well, as Shadow's able to spawn in this special Manta Ray, which allows him to surf across the surface of water. And then finally, before talking about the endpoint, we have Doom Morph, which allows Shadow to transform into this little squid creature, as he can swim within this purple goop. At first I wasn't really too big on it because I felt like it was too unwieldy, but the more I play with it, the more I love it, especially with that lasso. As when you grapple onto something, when you let go mid-swing, you'll launch right into the air. And this is why I love the much more sandbox style of this game, as it allows you to practice these various moves, and so when you go to the actual levels, you will know what to do. And my god, all the levels in this game are so freaking good, with most of them representing parts of Shadow's history. Like the Space Culling Arc is a callback to his debut game, Sonic Adventure 2 on the SEGA Dreamcast. In Sonic Heroes, he makes his grand return as you travel across Rail Canyon, and Kingdom Valley was one of the more memorable areas of Sonic 06, so it's really cool to see that reimagined in this game. As well as Sunset Heights, because at first I was a bit confused on why they included this one. But I guess they choose a level from Sonic Forces because this was the game where Shadow was able to be playable for the first time since 06. And as for Chaos Island, Frontiers had no involvement with Shadow in that game, so the only reason why this area is included because Sonic Frontiers was the most recent game in the series at the time, so fair enough, I guess. But my lord, did Sonic Team ever got the budget of a lifetime, because these levels are honestly one of the best in the entire Sonic series, period. There's just so much stuff jam-packed in these levels, as every time you replay through this game, you find different paths every single time. It's never ending. Like compared to the original Sunset Heights from Sonic Forces, that game literally had some of the worst level design in any Sonic game, period. Even more so than Sonic 06, because at the very least you do a lot more than just walking through a straight line. As in the original level, Sonic just runs to a bunch of enemies, but in Shadow Generations, there are way more obstacles in your way, and it's very fun to use Chaos Control to see what paths you can go through. Like, there's this one section where the Death Egg robots are throwing debris. You can actually use Chaos Control to slow down time, and use the flying debris as platforming to get to a different area. When I was going through Rail Canyon, I accidentally used Chaos Spear to break this barrel, and inside it is a spring that leads to a shortcut in this level. Even the 2D section in these games are very fun to go through, because even though it's a bit more limiting compared to the 3D stages, you still find so many different paths with Chaos Control, or using your powers in so many fun ways. Even though that this game came out roughly a week ago by the time I'm making this, I have 11 hours in this game already. And I still want to go back into playing this game because the levels in this game are just so fun. Even with the bonus mission structure from Generation Returns in this game, with the pacing of these is just so much better than the original, as most of the missions here feel very unique from one another. And I really love this cheeky callback to Shadow the Hedgehog where, in one of the missions, you have to defeat a certain amount of artificial chaos, which is a callback to an infamous mission from Shadow the Hedgehog where you have to do the same thing. And as for the bosses, well, besides the final one, there's only about 3 bosses in this game compared to Sonic Generations, where I had 6. They already showed the first one, which so happens to be the Bio Lizard, where it has multiple phases, with the first one being a reimagining of the one in SA2, But then the boss becomes a completely different beast when it introduced these robotic arms. And my god, oh my god, the freaking boss choreography in this game is so freaking good. Like, you end things off by deflecting this giant blast against the Bio Lizard to take him down. And then the next boss fight we have, holy shit, is that Metal Overlord? Yeah, I tried to go into this game completely blind, and man, when I saw that, oh man. Okay, I'm gonna try and keep it together. So yeah, this boss fight is really cool as you surf across the ocean trying to take him down. I also like the fact that Metal talks a lot during this boss fight, where he constantly mocks Shadow as he's the real ultimate life form, with Shadow stating that he's a complete fool for thinking that, and was able to take him down single-handedly. And then for the pre-ultimate boss fight, we head deep inside the chasms of the White Void, and what we are greeted with is fucking Mephiles! Fucking Mephiles! As this boss fight focuses specifically on the Doom Warp, and this is another really good boss fight. I'm just so amazed that they brought back Mephiles. And how they do so is a completely clever way, because in the White Void, it not only brings stuff from the past and future, but also stuff from erased timelines like Crisis City from 06. So Mephiles being here is a natural fit. And unlike the other bosses in this place, Mephiles is fully acknowledged that he no longer exists. Hell, not even Shadow remembers him. And you can even feel a different kind of tone when you're trying to enter a stage, because unlike the other boss gates, where they're out in the open, high up in these towers, Mephiles is deeply hidden inside of this cave, like we're literally exploring his tomb. And you can really feel a sense of desperation with Mephiles in this boss fight, as he knows that this is probably going to be the only opportunity he'll get by restoring himself to the timeline. As he literally attempts to kill Shao from behind, but when Shao becomes the upper hand, he then states,
There is no future for you. Ever.
God damn, that was a gnarly line. So yeah, so far Shadow Generations is an amazing package, as it's basically Sonic Generations and Sonic Frontiers but a lot more refined. And to top things off, this game looks freaking fantastic. Even for the Nintendo Switch, despite it being a lot more low-res compared to the other competitors, it still looks really good. Now, even though that I love playing through Frontiers, I have 90 hours in it, the one thing I did not like about it was its presentation, as I thought the graphics in that game looked really bland. So I'm really glad that the success of that game gave Sonic Team a lot more production value to make this game look freaking spectacular. Even the animations in this game had a crazy glow up, as every character in this game just feels so lively, which is very important when you're trying to tell a very meaningful story. And speaking of which, I think it's very appropriate to talk about the second half of Shadow Generations' story, as I've been saving this one for last. So as Shadow explores the various areas of the White Void, he notices some familiar faces far off in the distance. Assuming that he's just hallucinating, he then continues on, but later on in the game, as he tries to go through Sunset Heights, he then sees Maria being attacked by Black Doom's army, where Shadow gives them a freaking beating of a lifetime to save Maria, and then Gerald Robotnik appears as well trying to get Maria into safety, as Shadow then realizes that these two came from a point in time before the Ark Raid, which makes him ponder that he might have an opportunity to actually change their fates. Which brings an interesting dilemma for Shadow. And while this happens, Black Doom then explains more about Shadow about his own plans, and also explains more about Maria's past as well, as none of the games until now brought up this point about Maria, as she suffers from a terminal illness that cannot be treated on Earth, which is why she lives up with Gerald Robotnik in that space station, as the gravity up there helps calm her illness down. And as for Shadow, well, Gerald Robotnik strikes a deal with Black Doom to create the ultimate soldier for him, so the special Doom powers that Shadow has been getting throughout the game is part of his big plan. As well as this giant thing up in the sky of white space, which is called the Black Moon, and once Shadow completely powers up with his final move, the moon then engulfs the entirety of the White Void into this red space, as Black Doom proclaims that Shadow is completely his now. And now it's all up to Shadow to decide if he wants to work for him, or stop him once and for all. And of course, since Shadow is the ultimate life form, he decides to make things right and destroy Black Doom once and for all. But before he does so, Shadow then tells Maria that he is done with that destructive anger in him, as he states that he'll be fighting for the wish in Maria's heart, as he tries to make a world a better place and to make everyone happy. And Shadow proves it by being happy himself, as he fully smiles in front of Maria, and this... oh. So yeah, it's time for the final battle as we head to the final area of this game, with the very last Doom power in this game, the Doom Wings. Now you actually do try this power at the second level of this game for a bit, but you don't unlock this move until the near end of this game, because this is basically the equivalent of a supersonic form, as Shadow is able to glide across different parts of the area. And what is also very nifty is that, since the Doom Wings allows you to glide, the game gives you an entirely different ranking system depending on if you have it or not, which is honestly really cool and adds a lot more replayability to this game. And all this leads is Radical Highway from the hit video game Sonic Adventure 2. Now you technically play this area a lot in this game, as throughout the game you also encounter Doomai, as he throws you into different twisted areas of Radical Highway from the hit video game Sonic Adventure 2. So it's very fitting that the very first level you ever play as Shadow is the one you conclude this game. And what is also very cool is that when you start this area, it starts as a recreation of Radical Highway from the hit video game Sonic Adventure 2. But the more you progress through the game, Radical Highway from the hit video game Sonic Adventure 2 gets more and more messed up, like this is the area where Black Doom fully corrupted. I highly recommend trying this area out without wings, because trying to master this level and try to get that S rank is one of the most fun things I've ever had with a platformer period, as it's just really fun to optimize your best route, try to make sure you save those precious seconds. And to finally end things off, we have one big rematch against Shadow and Black Doom. And this final boss is a multi-phase final battle as you use all your Doom powers to your advantage. And I cannot think of a better way to conclude this game, as Shadow flies across this twisted city, as All Hail Shadow plays in the background.
Shadow the Hedgehog. This is the destiny I choose. Now, to end this!
I crafted everything up till now, and yet you deny me! Shadow,
And when it's all said and done, Black Doom is finally destroyed. And now that he's gone, time itself has slowly becoming to heal, which unfortunately means is that Gerald and Maria are going to go back to their time, meaning that their fates of what happened to them are now sealed. Shadow then desperately tries to call Rouge back to try and stop time again, but Maria stops him and tries to comfort him for one final time, as she explains that it's best for him to let them go and not have them trapped here forever. And even though Shadow was not able to save their fates, he did gain one thing from all this, as he was finally able to have some closure and say one final goodbye to his family, as he runs past by Rouge to meet up with Sonic, concluding Shadow Generations. And oh man, that ending. I'll tell you one thing, is that ending actually did get me. I really never had a pondering moment in a Sonic game since SA2 on the GameCube. I cannot explain more why I think this game is freaking amazing. Gone are the days of mediocrity and overly safe because of self-doubt. The Sonic series and Sonic Team finally have the confidence they need to make really good products again. With Sonic Frontiers, it was a pretty solid game, but there was a lot of glaring issues, but Shadow Generations proves that Sonic Team is finally out of the gutters and ready to make very ambitious games again. And even though Shadow Generations is a fairly small game, this is definitely going to be one of the best Sonic experiences ever made, period. And the craziest thing too is that this is a freaking compilation with another really good Sonic game. If you're very curious on the Sonic series, then I highly recommend trying out Sonic X Shadow Generations. It is definitely going to be the best package you'll ever get from the Sonic series, period. And I know I'm going to be playing the hell out of this game hell and back for the next few decades. The road might have been bumpy for a few years, but I feel like the Sonic series is now back as a AAA franchise again. Well, maybe for the Nintendo side of things, but who knows. But as for the next video, by the time this one released, Mario and Luigi Brothership has finally set sail. So next time we'll be here when we talk about the grand return of one of Nintendo's most cherished RPG series. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye-bye!